To go to this kind of inordinate effort and take the metal off the exchange, to deliver it off the exchange, says something tremendous. It is that the most sophisticated investors are using this rigged market to leave the system and gain independence.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for July 4th through July 11th, 2023, while supplies last. This week we featured 2023 Silver Philharmonics at $3.79 over spot, and ITALPREZIOSI 10-ounce silver bars at just $2.79 over spot per ounce. First, frequently regarded as one of the most beautiful sovereign coins, the Austrian Philharmonic portrays instruments from the Vienna Orchestra on one side and the grand pipe organ from the famed Augsburg Golden Hall on the other, all in 3/9 fine pure silver with a face value of €1.5. These 2023 Philharmonics come 20 to a tube, 500 to a box, are just $3.79 over spot, and are IRA eligible. Next, our ITALPREZIOSI 10-ounce silver bars not only maintain a great level of liquidity, but also boast one of our lowest premiums in months, at $2.79 over spot per ounce. They come individually numbered, are available in any quantity, and come 50 to a box. Both our specials this week are IRA eligible. And if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're always glad to have this returning guest. Andy Schectman, the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals, joins us this Tuesday, July 4th. Happy Independence Day, everyone, and happy 4th of July for this weekly market update. Andy, thanks for coming back on.
Great to be here, Dunnigan. Hope you and yours have a great 4th, and everyone out there. And it's always good to be here with you.
Every time the 4th of July comes around, these last few years in particular, I think it's becoming more and more poignant and meaningful to so many of us and so many of our viewers, frankly, because they talk about independence. We're no longer thinking about Britain, perhaps, but certainly the banks that we left England to get away from, as well as the intrusion on our privacy, our property rights, our constitutional rights, etc. And so it's a good time to think about independence and what are we trying to get independent from, and why is that our natural right? So don't give up on that thought, people. And Andy, I'm sure you have some words for us about that. Again, we look to you for both observations and insights inside the precious metal supply chain, as well as broader trends that are happening in the global financial world. So you can start in either of those realms that you like. You've talked to us recently about kind of being in the calm of the storm within the precious metals availability. We'll get to that in a little while, but first, if you want to give us a quick update on any new developments that you're hearing about in the global financial picture, so that we know what's happening around us and we can make our plans accordingly.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned the correlation between July 4th holiday and precious metals. And I guess in the back of my mind, I've always acknowledged that and embraced it, so to speak. In a world of decreasing privacy and increased litigation, and in a world where your digital footprint is becoming more and more and more pronounced, in a world where anonymity is fleeing, I guess I've always really respected and enjoyed the benefit of owning an asset that is not simultaneously the liability of a third party, owning an asset that I don't even know how much I have sometimes, and requires me on a annual basis to count what I have and what I've added and what I've subtracted. And it's very analog in a very digital world. And you can see even our currency is becoming more digital. Our banking is digital. We access our home and our cars, and everything now is in our hands with the digital application and the digital footprint. And I take some sort of it gives me kind of an inner peace, so to speak, in a weird way. And I guess I've really never articulated it, but I've always understood it and embraced it. And in a world where counterparty risk and systemic risk is becoming more pronounced, there is something to be said for the independence you get, and pun intended, of course, from having an asset like gold and silver that really are free from that. And I think we're beginning to see that. Well, not beginning, we have seen that. This is something I've talked about with you for a very long time, and I noticed it in 2020 with the rise of the others. We've talked about that a lot on COMEX, where in 2020, this group of traders that was new to the Commitment of Traders report, typically it was just the commercial banks and the specs or the hedge funds that were listed as the largest traders, and their positioning on the Commitment of Traders report. That report that's published weekly by the CME group shows the positioning of the largest traders, two groups until there was a third, the others, who took more silver in 2020 than we typically see in a decade. And that trend continued in 2021, and it started to catch, I think, too much attention. And not just by guys like me and you, but too much attention from everyone, and maybe the traders. I don't know who rattled the bushes enough, because we talked in 2022 about this phenomenon called exchange for physical. Exchange for physical is a very opaque way of taking a contract that you have on COMEX that would otherwise stand for delivery, and instead you shift it over to the London Metals Exchange and you take delivery there. Get this, 1.13 billion ounces with a B were exchanged for physical in 2022. How many people know that? 1.13 billion ounces, more than an entire year's worth of mine supply, was taken for exchange for physical off the London Metals Exchange. And maybe this is why the LBMA came out with a letter at the end of 2022 saying, if we see deliveries reminiscent of 2022 here in 2023, there will be nothing left to deliver. Last month, in June, we saw 110 million ounces delivered in exchange for physical that would have otherwise been delivered on the COMEX. The preceding 2 months before that, previous 2 months, somewhere in the neighborhood of 230 million ounces. Do you see a trend? So they I think, got too much attention here on the COMEX and now have shifted it to the LBMA and are draining the exchanges as the price has come down. And interestingly enough, June 30th was the last day for the July delivery contract, for everything to be in. And we saw what is normally a very prominent player in the futures market perhaps leave for good. Now, this is a very strange month where we saw almost 150 million ounces in open interest just disappear. And what was strange about it to me was the managed money that actually sold, 20 million plus ounces of long silver contracts and then disappeared. Now, they didn't go short the way they normally do. When they sell their long, they usually go short, take the other side. They just left the rigged casino. But more relevant than that was Standard Chartered Bank, who had to come up with 12 million ounces of silver. And if you look at the registered category, it increased to 38 million ounces of registered silver. People may get nervous by that, but you watch, after the July deliveries take place, you're going to see that number drop by 12 million ounces. And what was very interesting about it is Standard Chartered Bank has less than 5,000 ounces left on the COMEX in their eligible account. That's less than one contract. And what is okay, because the 1,000-ounce bars are never exactly 1,000 ounces. They're like at 4,900 ounces. This is a very prominent player who looks like they are leaving the casino. And arguably, that's exactly what you see these traders, whoever the hell they are, standing for delivery in exchange for physical and leaving the casino, removing counterparty risk that gives you what? Independence. Independence from the rigged environment. And it betrays the price. It betrays the price. And I just need people to understand that to go to this kind of inordinate effort and take the metal off the exchange, to deliver it off the exchange, says something tremendous. It is that the most sophisticated investors are using this rigged market to leave the system and gain independence. I'm going to keep using that word here since it is the July 4th holiday, but there's something to be said for that. And I think that people need to really understand what this means. And when you see a player like Standard Chartered Bank, who has been very active in shorting metals, all but sell everything they have or deliver everything they have, it tells me that maybe they realize this is a game that is very quickly ending, because you can only suppress a market for as long as there is fuel to suppress it. And if you don't see the managed money take the other side of these short positions, when you see the commercial banks cover 35 million ounces this week, something's going on. And I think that people should pay attention. It's very intriguing to me as it pertains to kind of the trickle-down effect from supply, which many people like Andrew Maguire are saying there is a wholesale shortage of bars, even though there is a plethora of product in the retail industry. It's kind of hard for people to delineate the two, but when you see this kind of outflow of metal, it says to me maybe he's right. Shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to talk about what's going on with the BRICS and what's going on, on a bigger picture. And there are, let's see here, some things, not a lot happening, but some things that are worth talking about. And, I think we have the expansion of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And I have felt for a while now that the BRICS nations will combine with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The players are largely the same, but you have the Soviet Foreign Minister Lavrov just announced that Iran will join the SCO on July 4th and that Belarus will also become a full member. They have a virtual meeting on July 4th. That's tomorrow, well, when this show airs, and it's chaired by India. And I find it to be slightly, maybe more than a coincidence, that the meeting takes place on the United States Day of Independence. The Republic of Belarus and Bahrain are in the final stage of obtaining dialogue partner status with the Shanghai Cooperation as well. Memorandums were signed for granting dialogue partnership status to Kuwait, Maldives, Myanmar, and the United Arab Emirates. Turkey and other countries are also seeking to join, and all of these countries have applied to, many of them, to BRICS and to the Belt Road. One of the things I also wanted to bring up, which is interesting to me when you talk about the COMEX, is a note that just came out on the 29th of June that Moscow, the new Moscow Exchange, plans on trading in gold futures in the very near future. In fact, in July, they will launch their new gold and silver futures that will have delivery in, I don't know if it was November and December, but it is a futures contract with delivery options. And one of the things that I was thinking about in the way that they could certainly harm the Western rigged system would be just to issue an AM and PM fix like we were told they're going to do, but set an AM fix, set the fix right away for silver at $50 an ounce and gold for $3,000, and watch what happens to all of the Western supply that immediately arbitrages eastward and never comes back. And I think these are the kind of things that they have in mind. And all of these events that they're doing are little by little by little by little. These pieces are being put into place. President Ruto from Kenya just came out and said, we no longer want the IMF or the World Bank. We need a new financial architecture where governance and power is not in the hands of a few. a new organization of equals. And, we're seeing more and more and more, and which just leads me to a little bit of a rant that I want to mention. And look, after World War II, the United States and has been the leading superpower, and you could argue that almost all of the countries since then, for a very long time anyway, were very happy using the dollar as the world reserve currency. We had the faith. People had the faith in America's government, our financial institutions, and our adherence to the rule of law, right? And I would like to submit that things are changing. And I think we have gained a reputation around the world for sanctioning countries who do not get in line with our agendas, for irresponsibly spending and gross mismanagement of the world reserve currency. We have gained recognition for a banking crisis that I would argue is far from over, and questionable dealings, let's just say, with the president's son, in contrast to what's happening to former President Trump. And I think this must make it a little bit questionable, if not very hard, on much of the world to believe that the rule of law still holds much value in the United States. I would like to think otherwise, but I know that is on the minds of a lot of people. And I think amongst those who understand that the dollar's global role centers on trust. And I would argue that trust is waning. And when we talk about the rise of another system, the only way this system will work will be through the extension of trust. And that's why I think that precious metals like gold, we were told by Jim Rickards that August 22nd at the new meeting in Johannesburg for the BRICS countries, he believes they will issue a currency largely pegged to gold, if not some other commodities. And the way that you make that work is to have the veracity of that gold shown on a distributed ledger, and to do that right, you have it audited and with great transparency. Now, I'm not saying the dollar will disappear all at once, but what I am saying is to not acknowledge the pieces that are being rapidly put into place all around us. Gold's role in this, and actually distributed ledger technologies' role in this new system, I think will be a mistake. And every single day there is a new story. What started out 3 years ago as every quarter now becomes every day, and sometimes multiple times per day, another story that fits this agenda, this growing narrative of countries coalescing together using commodities and mutual beneficial cooperation into what appears to be a new multipolar world where I think gold has a very relevant role. So I just wanted to say that for those people out there who think that countries like the BRICS lack the trust of the rest of the world, I would agree with that statement. I don't think the United States has much of the world's trust any longer either. And that is why Zoltan Pozsar has said, and I agree with him, we have entered Bretton Woods III, a system dominated by commodities and transparency, and using distributed ledger technology to show the veracity of what is backing, that being the only other tier one reserve asset in the world. Perhaps backing a new system is the only way to make it work. And so that is the motivation of everything that I talk about as it pertains to this growing chorus of countries. And I think to focus on the recency bias of the dollar being the only option in the world, and to never think that a challenger will arise, is a mistake. And unfortunately, I feel we are on the heels or the foothills of a big change. And if Jim is right, and they come out with a gold-backed currency and a bond market to support it, as he surmises, things are going to get very interesting as we head into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, we've been told for some time that it's the lack of a bond market outside the U.S. dollar that has the depth and liquidity to carry the burden and the weight of a global reserve currency. He said, and Jim has talked about that there's a difference between being a trade settlement currency versus the world's reserve currency, and the bond market being a key factor there. It will be very, very informative what happens. There's a lot of analysts, you're one of them, who are watching with great interest what's going to happen in third quarter and fourth quarter of this year, because it seems like things are really coming to a head in a way that we've seen preparatory steps for some time that have all been leading somewhere, and it seems that that somewhere is going to become a lot clearer a lot sooner than later. And one of the things you mentioned along the way was this move towards a verifiable currency based on real assets, whether that's precious metals or whether that's commodities or both. And it strikes me just as I tend to come at this from a very kind of common sense, everyman's perspective. It's like, isn't that just getting back to basics? Isn't that just getting back to the way things always were or should have been? When you work a day's work on your farm or whatever, and you bring in the harvest, and that's yours because you put in the work, and with the cooperation of God and nature and all that, it came to be. But it isn't like you have to ask someone's permission to have access to it. It isn't like somebody can come and steal it away from you covertly by devaluing it, or it's not worth anything anymore, but it's real. And that reminds me, and this maybe ties back into the liberty part or the independence part that maybe I'd like to give you one more crack at, is we've interviewed teaching farmer Joel Salatin from Polyface Farms numerous times on our channel, and the fundamental virtues and values that he espouses, which trains people, teaches people how, folks, you really can get back to being connected with real things. And he talks about the contrast of people who are at peace, as you mentioned, peace, who know where their food is coming from, know where their water is coming from, know that there's a store of those things set aside that are long shelf life, and they're not anxious. He said the people coming out of the big cities had abject fear in their eyes with their masks on, coming to their farm stands. And he said, we get up in the morning and the cows get up and the chickens get up and the strawberries are blooming, and we know where our food's going to come from. But the people in the city they're anxious. They have anxiety and they have fear because they don't have peace like we have in the country, he said, because we know where our sustenance lies, and it doesn't come from derivatives, and it doesn't come from huge complex structures and long supply chains and all that sort of thing. Any further thoughts on that before we talk about what's going on in the bullion industry?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, I lived in Minnesota my whole life, never saw supply chain issues ever. And then I came down here to southern Florida, and there was a hurricane scare last year, and it missed us predominantly. It spun off some tornadoes that blew down a Home Depot a few miles from my house. Didn't even know that there were tornadoes in Florida. How's about that? But point of it is I was blown away. Down here, there's a chain of grocery stores called Publix, and I swear you can throw a baseball from one to the next. They seem to be on every corner. And I was blown away by how fast every single grocery store within a 20-mile radius, and I bet you there's 100 of them, they were just gone. Everything
and
gone.
Fuel at the gas stations.
Yeah, and in fact, when just recently during there was a big flood, and for some reason, and I didn't even quite figure out how this worked. Evidently, flight has a lot to do with it, but there was a flood of the Fort Lauderdale airport. There was huge rain. They call it once in a 100-year rainstorm, and the Fort Lauderdale airport was flooded. Now, I guess I didn't realize that fuel was transported by airplanes, but evidently it is. I would have thought it would be mostly truckers. But every gas station from Miami northward up to where I am, almost an hour by car, they were out of fuel. And I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, I live in a suburb way away from Miami, and 80 to 90% of the gas stations had lines around the corner. And this was just from a flood. The just-in-time type of delivery, people need to understand that. But here again, when we talk about recency bias and normalcy bias, it is the same thing, only in a different hat. And whether you talk about how fast things can change with food and water and preparedness versus how fast things can change with the system, I've long since argued. It's an exponential curve where things start to change little by little by little, and then they fall off the cliff. And just like Hemingway went broke, little by little, then all at once. And I would argue that's exactly what we're seeing happen here. All of these pieces that we talk about, who cares what's happening in Kenya? Who cares what's happening in Zimbabwe? Who cares what's happening in all of these far corners of the world? Well, you should. because little by little by little by little by little by little, then bang, all at once on a Sunday morning, we wake up, or a Monday morning, to a new reality. And I think that's where we are heading. And I think suffering from recency bias, whether it be in preparedness for your family's food and water and shelter and physical protection or financial protection, they all have something in common. And that is, you have to first acknowledge the potential for protection, for insurance, for preparedness. And if you don't, you scramble and you lose peace of mind. So I think there's a lot there in common. I appreciate that insight. But as far as precious metals are concerned, Dunnigan, look, I'll say it again. It's very interesting. You listen to guys like Andrew Maguire, you see the massive deliveries coming off of the world's exchanges, and you wonder, is there this massive shortfall in wholesale demand? Now, I believe it. I think there probably is. But it's hard for a lot of people to justify that statement when they see premiums falling and availability as good as it is right now. And I understand that. Obviously, the wholesale demand is somewhat of a leading indicator for the retail product availability. And if indeed we are seeing what certainly it seems like a lot of players rushing to take the delivery any way they can, in this case, exchange for physical, that it is a foreshadowing of what will ultimately into the third quarter be higher premiums and lesser availability. And if, of course, we see more problems with the banks, and watching your interview with Rick Rule, I completely agreed with his take on the fact that we are nowhere near out of the woods, and he, much like myself, are both find it amusing that and shocking that the people around the United States feel that we're out of the woods, that everything was taken care of, and have forgotten about the banking problems. Of course, when they just did this recent stress test, only to find that Truist Bank and U.S. Bank are two of the worst banks in the United States, certainly brought it back home to me. It's because when I moved to Florida, I opened a bank with Truist, and when I left Minnesota, I left a U.S. bank account there. So, this is real. And no matter how much I try to escape it, even as an analyst, it keeps finding me. And I don't think we are out of the woods even a little bit, with several $100 billion worth of commercial real estate leases to reset in the third quarter at what is basically double the cost. And the small businesses that are attached to those leases realizing that the regional banking industry has roughly 70% of the small business loans and of the commercial loans and leases in the real estate space. So we're not out of the woods even remotely. We have not seen the end of the banking problems. And I think when that reignites, which I expect it to do here in the coming months, we will see a resumption of the craziness that was March and April in this industry. So, I think this is the best buying opportunity for those that want to add to their portfolio that I have seen in over 3 years. Price, premium, availability, and counterintuitive pricing when we see such a massive rush to take physical delivery by the most well-informed traders on the globe and well-funded. It just seems to me like a no-brainer. But here again, it bucks human nature. When people are told to buy low and sell high, they typically buy when there's validation, kind of like the person who has anxiety that he hasn't prepared well enough with food and water. That's what we saw in March and April for the people who had tremendous anxiety. Just, I got to get my money out of the bank, please. We don't hear that right now, but we will before the end of the year. And that's the ironic thing about this whole ecosystem is a lot of people inherently get it, but they're just closing their eyes and hoping it goes away. And that's not the way to prepare. And this is no different. So in continuing with our attempts to continue to bring specials to the public, we're going to offer this week 2023 Silver Philharmonics at $3.79 over the price of silver. And continuing with last week's special, the 10-ounce Italian ITALPREZIOSI 10-ounce silver bars. They're really very nice, and those are $2.79 over spot per ounce, and both are in stock and ready for immediate delivery. So next week maybe it'll be gold, but the value still leans with silver, and until then we'll keep offering silver as long as we're able. And Dunnigan, you know, as always, I appreciate your back and forth, your wisdom in all of these subjects, and giving me the platform to rant a little bit. It's cathartic to me, and I just appreciate the heck out of it.
Well, the main point, and thank you for that, is that our viewers appreciate it, and they watch you by the tens of thousands. And folks, you will also be able to hear Andy speak at the Rule Symposium on Natural Resource Investing later this month in Boca Raton, Florida. And if you can't make it to Boca Raton, there is a 100% virtual option available. Just look in the comments of this video, and you can get signed up there, save money, save travel costs, save time, and you still get to hear Andy's talk. So Andy, as always, thanks for joining us on Liberty and Finance.
I appreciate you, my friend. I hope you have a very safe and happy 4th, and to everyone out there as well. We have a lot to be thankful for, and you know, look, one last thing. I would never count out the American spirit, you know, and the resolve. And when our backs are against the wall, we often perform best. So look, everything that I say comes from the fact that I am a patriot who thanks God every day that this country has afforded me the luxuries and the opportunities that it has. And the least likely cast of characters, my family, to have ever achieved what we have. And so I hope that we are able to, by waking people up one by one, find a way to turn this ship around. But I promise, Dunnigan, to hang in there with you until the very end, and hopefully we can see this through together and get to a point where you know, we have more cheerful things to talk about. But until then, I appreciate it, and I look forward to picking up with you again here real soon.
Thanks, Andy. As always, great for having you on Liberty and Finance.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.